here in Somaliland, and he has been engaged with many trade and development forums, organizing them, managing them, more of 15 economic sector coordination meetings, and he is also a member of the Berbera Corridors Technical Committee since 2016, if I'm not mistaken. And in the middle, we have Mr. Tezera Tazebu, coming from my new home country, from Ethiopia. He's an academic, and his alma mater contains of the University of Cambridge, Addis Ababa University, as well as the University of Gondar. And he's known and a rising star as a critical thinker, so will be quite interesting what you will be telling us. I think most of you, I don't have to explain the importance of the trade relations between Ethiopia and Somaliland, or the Berbera Corridor. As Ethiopia is a landlocked country, for Ethiopia it is of utmost importance. For Somaliland, it's a very well connection to the neighbor. And if we maybe talk a little bit about regional integration and the importance for the whole Horn of Africa as well as East Africa, there will be probably some sometimes too. As you know, Sahar is quite strict with the time, so she gave me a very tight schedule also what to do. So just so you guys know, I will explain that. Every panelist will have 10 minutes for a short input, followed by the privilege I'm having as a moderator to ask a few first questions, and then we'll go to the Q&A, and we'll close after that with recommendations from the panelists. Just one little info regarding the Q&A. Please be short. Please ask one question each. Please, I know it's tempting, but please don't try to start having your own speech. So be brief so that everybody here in the room, and the room is packed, can ask questions. And without further ado, I would now like to hand over the microphone to Mr. Ali. Please, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. أكبر السلامية. أنا مثلي مانتك جيبوتي. particularly جامعة جيبوتي. مركي مو رسالة تاي فرصة كوي معه Somaliland رسالة. نقول أنا قرني شيء تذكر جيبوتي ده اللغة ده محبر نقبة وحكم معنى النبضة واللغة الفرنسية. هذانا لغة سكين كانت وصومالية بهذا علم الصومالي ما بهرتا كوكب بنية كدبنا وحنسكت إلى أفريقيا نيجو معناه هدف كانوا جوجو أو وطن كجيبوتي مركز لجها ضيو بكذا إن وحقوه رأي كسر لسان تاي security نينكس بدها أتكيا security جا وبعد كده هنا بسكرة أو بكرة وضلنا أنا بالله تخصص كي أو PhD جا كسوقاتي والأبراد الصومالي دا سيدي جيبوتي وقفل عيسي سي أي أمني أم بنبض وداليسو جيس كأفريقيا أي نده وقمر داليسنا إن أيقو كشو حاجة سويدرسية business أدبر ما تنتي أدبر هذا اللي في هنقولها أكاديمية Peace and Development Regional Conference كان سبي حنقول ماذا اللي يوصي كونري ويكون فن فيه كدي وحنقول جودي إن عندي أخريو كسر اللغة الإنجليزية هو أنا وأنا أبغى أقول برا لكن وحنسكت بيه إن عندي معنى يوني الشهير وحي سؤالنا هذا الصومالي ويتسين هذا الإنجليزي ويتسين بقى حنسكت بيه يعني يقول جوابه صومالي أدبر ما تنتي Djibouti is a city-state and has soon become an hub for world maritime trade, strategically located in the Gulf of Aden and Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, with an economy based essentially in transport. Djibouti is constantly promoting its positions as a city-state and global hub at the cross of East Africa and a major Europe easy maritime acts link up with the emergency war. As for the project to set up a military base, which is supposed to be higher beneficial in Djibouti economy, it is essential to correlate parameters such as security and safety in a wide area ranging from the high seas to dry land, including the establishment of the port complex. With regard to the installation of military base, one of the trade is piracy and the high seas. International conventions have showed their limitation when it came to repressing Somalia piracy, who, after the mistake, take refuge without being bothered in the territorial water of Somalia. A state has been including for some 20 years. In the Montego Bay Convention, Somalia is responsibility for apprehension piracy. Faced with Somalia states failed. International community stood still in there. The United Nations Security Council passed a series of important resolutions, including the resolution of June 2018, which considered that it was in the interest in Somalia to set up a temporary derogation regime to the classic principle of the international law of the sea. It authorized states to enter Somalia territorial waters in order to prosecute acts of piracy on the high seas. The resolution extends to the zone within which it's possible to prosecute the perpetrator of the act of piracy in the high sea, which is frequently referred to as a reverse right of the hot pursuit. This innovation is totally exceptional. The Port of Djibouti has become logistical base for this operation in Somalia territorial waters and the high seas. What's the more, the Port of Djibouti cannot stand idle by the national and regional context where security is under increasing threat. To ensure a security port infrastructure, the authority have set up a security management that run its first among East Africa country. Security is an imperative for Djibouti, given that its port remains the near center of national economy. The security and safety dimension is at the heart of this interdependence, as it have now been established that in East Africa, as in the rest in the continent, security cannot be approached in the same way as in the past because of its close link with the development and stability. Security must occupy in central place in the design and implementation of any development and integration policy. Analysts of the new security context with precise identification of the new threat must inspire the development of the new defense and security policy at the national and sub-regional level to ensure great efficiency. It is an imperative to develop the capacity of the state to meet the challenge posed by this threat. It is therefore up the state and integration body in liaison with the EU and the national UN to give serious thought to this within the framework and the strong strategy partner. The main that integrated management of the security and of the maritime, land and air infrastructure is become an essential model. What's more, dealing with this different trade and represented a major challenge for Djibouti, which must ensure both the personal and economic security is inevitable. Now we just explain the correlation between port and corridor. The principle of the Djibouti corridor is due partly to the historical fact, modern Ethiopian's first corridor, and particularly the consequence of the regional geopolitical context. Ethiopia's economy played, therefore, seemed to affected by this change in as the sea, particularly between Djibouti and Assab, and by a policy and competition between the various corridors. Although the development of the port infrastructure has been favored for Djibouti since 2000, the port area in the process of modernization in order to meet the requirement of the climate change through a clear port authority policy, reduce road transport and shifting goods to rail, and as a green port, part of the energy consumed by coal came from wind power. All of this has been possible thanks to strong integration between two countries, Djibouti and Ethiopia. An analysis of the development of the port of Djibouti suggests that the territory has been able to take advantage of the fact specific to major power. The port of Djibouti has therefore prioritized certain functions, initially military, that saving the hinterland, and the other to serve their foreign power. The port therefore had a dual function, both of which depending on external factor. At that time, it was stopover for coal bringing and transshipment and the maritime route, while at other time it was the main outlet of Ethiopia. The operation of the Djibouti corridor provides a base for studying the relationship between landlocked country and its maritime opening. The return of the Ethiopian to Djibouti corridor has apparently placed the large country in a situation of external dependence on a small maritime country. A close analysis reveals a much more complex relationship, which is far from being to disadvantage of the landlord country. In fact, we observe that continental landlord according play the leading role, contrary to the paradigm that postulate the coast state will be better off or at advantage in this type of situation. 1 minute. Okay. Let's conclude. Djibouti has become a model of success development of regional integration in the Horn region, thanks to its port and transport infrastructure. It's anticipated in building 7 specialized ports, demonstrate its ambition to meet the need and demand of customers in the country of the region, namely Ethiopia and South Sudan, etc. In the same way, Djibouti aims to diversify both its port activity and its customer. This will facilitate better regional integration of landlord country. At the present, we cannot talk about competition, but rather about really opportunity offered by the core. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali. So from Djibouti, we will now head over to Berbera. And please, Mr. Abib, could you enlighten us what the newest developments are and how the trade corridor is actually going.
Thank you very much. Ugu horeyn waxaan u mahadcelinayaa akademiyadda oo inoo soo qabanqaabisay madashan quruxda badan leh oo ah madal aynu kaga hadlayno arrimaha dhaqaalaha iyo ganacsiga iyo isku gudubka badeecadaha koridharka. waxaan rajaynayaa insha allahu tacaala inay ka soo baxaan xal iyo talooyin waara oo aynu xogo fara badan iyo macluumaad la xidhiidha mandiqadan aynu ku naalno siday tahay maanta inaynu si dhow isula dul istaagno. waxayna anfici doontaa doodani iyo discussionkani ganacsato badan oo arrimaha dhaqaalaha ka shaqeeya akademiyada iyo wixii research institutions ah. I would like to briefly highlight about the Berbera corridor to give you a snapshot and to update you what has happened so far. First of all, I can say Berbera corridor has the potential to create economic opportunities for Somaliland and for Ethiopia. For Somaliland, the corridor will provide a much needed boost to its economy by increasing trade and investment. And for Ethiopia, it will provide an opportunity to access an alternative port. If you look at the economy of the Ethiopian side, is fast growing economy, and in Africa it is said that Ethiopia is one of the fastest growing economy. And in this regard, it is must that the Ethiopian government and the Ethiopian people have an access to diversified ports for their trade volumes, for the trade in goods and imports, and as well as increasing exports. So if you go back to 2016, when the Somaliland government and the DB World has signed a concession agreement for 30 years. That concession agreement provided the opportunity and a great milestone for the development and the operation of the Berbera corridor. Within that agreement, there were certain commitments made by DB World. These include that it will invest and finance up to $442 million. It was included that it want to expand the facilities and the port structure as well. It was included that economic free zone will be built. Also that it will be trained for the local community in Somaliland, particularly in Berbera, because if you look at major challenges for the Somaliland side is usually the human capital. And that was one key issue raised among the article signed. So let us see what has happened so far from 2016 up to now, what kind of change happened. The good news is that the first phase of the Berbera corridor has been completed with a cost of $244 million. And this phase was included the expansion of 400-meter key extension. This has resulted in two major reforms. Number one, it caused the expansion of the container terminal from 100,000 KTEU to 500,000 KTEU. And for the general cargo, that expansion has caused from 1 million metric ton to 2 million metric ton. In addition to this, the expansion was also included that the sea level to be increased, an increase from 11 meter in the sea level below to 17 meter. That is the main reason now that the port can serve for large ships, that they can come and provide services at the port. The other thing that this has resulted is that the number of vessels that used to come to the port was only 7, and now the port can serve up to 14 vessels can come. Putting all this together, it has increased the productivity and the capacity of the port. Along with this, the development that happened so far is not confined to the port development. There are also other development happened in the Somaliland side. From Hargeisa, from Berbera to Togwachale, this road was financed with $90 million by Abu Dhabi Development Fund. That project is almost in completion and will be completed by early 2024. Over 96% of that component has been completed. Many thanks to the FCDO UK and Trademark Africa, who has also supported the Hargeisa bypass with the completion of 22.5 kilometers from Hargeisa to around Hargeisa. And that has been with the cost of $33 million. In summing up, the cost that has been financed for the road development is $123 million. So these indicate very huge progress happened with regard to the infrastructural aspect. What is the role of the government of Somaliland? The government's role was about overseeing that these developments continue in a transparent and in a very clear way. Along with this, the government has done its part to make this corridor not only to be transit and transport corridor, but the vision of Somaliland is to make this corridor an economic corridor, a corridor that is serving for all, for everyone in Somaliland. So the government side has done the necessary legislations, the necessary acts and laws that would help the corridor to be transformed into an economic corridor. Investment Act has been completed. Customs Act, which is aligned with the World Customs Organization and WTO organization legislations standards have been completed. Special Economic Zone Act has been completed. These laws and these policies indicate the commitment of the government of Somaliland to ensure that this corridor should not only serve for large trucks and logistics, but also provide an opportunity for other business community, be they are small-scale businesses and other communities who want to make use of this project to provide an opportunity. Also, I would like to say that from Togwachale to Addis Ababa, when we say Berbera corridor, we do not only mean from Berbera to Togwachale, we mean also from Berbera to Addis Ababa, 937 kilometers. So this corridor does not belong to the Somaliland only, it also belongs to the Ethiopian side. From Togwachale to Addis Ababa, a lot of work is happening. My colleague might explain, including roads, including dry port, and other free zones activities. So African Development Bank, World Bank are financing and supporting these projects within Ethiopia. So this shows in total the commitment of both sides, the Somaliland and the Ethiopian side, that they both need to create a business and trade. So it is very good chance and very good opportunity for everyone who is interested in to make use of this milestone project to utilize. I would also like that if you look at the Togwachale is one very key area which is very important for the economy of both countries. A lot of work has been done as far as concerning Ministry of Trade. We have focused on developing the infrastructures related to the Togwachale because as a ministry, we're thinking like this project to provide a chance and opportunity for the small scale businesses. Now work is happening about how these SMEs could make use of this corridor. We have done a number of studies, and now there is very interesting research happening in Togbo Chale that's called Togbo Chale One-Stop Border Post Feasibility Study, with many thanks to Trademark Africa. And that is the kind of relationship we are talking about. It's very optimistic, it's very successful project, and hopefully how this might be utilized as we go into our discussion, we will learn from each other a lot. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Bakar. So now we've heard Djibouti, Somaliland, and we will head over to Ethiopia. So, Mr. Tizera, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Thanks so much. So I was asked to briefly talk about Ethiopia-Somaliland trade operations, and I'll focus on key challenges. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I will focus on the key challenges and opportunities that surround trade and transit through the Berbera corridor. So to start from the very beginning, the Berbera corridor is a strategic trade route and transportation that connects Ethiopia and Somaliland. So at the moderator side, I'm speaking from the vantage point of an Ethiopian as well as a mere academic. I don't have the vantage point of being a practitioner or a policy advisor, just like the two previous speakers. So keep that in mind. So the Berbera corridor, from an Ethiopian point of view, is part of the historic border regions in Ethiopia where there were intense border interactions. And this historical development of trade relations in the Berbera corridor is not an evolutionary process. Rather, the corridor experiences progress and regress in the long journey of its history. So, if we look at the contemporary trends of trade and transit in the Berbera corridor, there is no denying that the size of trade in the Berbera corridor, that means between Ethiopia and Somaliland, is enormous and rapidly growing from year to year, especially if we take 1991 as a turning point, because that's when the military regime in Ethiopia was succeeded by coalition, an ethnic coalition, and when Somaliland gained its independence. That's why I'm taking 1991 as a turning point. So trade is an important feature of the post-1991 economic relations in the Berbera corridor, and the trading activities in the corridor are specifically the usual foreign trade, that's import and export basically, and the small-scale border trade. So what has been the key challenge in fostering a strong bilateral trade relation between Ethiopia and Somaliland? The key challenge, as far as I'm concerned, the key challenge in fostering a strong bilateral trade relationship between Ethiopia and Somaliland in this period has been a huge size of informal trade, to which there are several factors and actors, but I'm not going to go into that detail. But other than this prevalence of informal trade, several efforts were made by both Somaliland and Ethiopian governments to create a conducive environment for trade and transit through the corridor. So basically, various institutional mechanisms were used by the governments of Ethiopia and Somaliland to create a conducive environment for trade and transit through the Berbera corridor. These institutional mechanisms include conventional customs offices, about which Barakat has spoken, rules concerning the small-scale border trade, and Franco-valuta regulations, and of course technical cooperation, cross-border cooperation, both domestic and international, and lastly, infrastructural development, which I will speak in detail. So border trade, just to point out, is governed usually through bilateral agreements or unilateral decisions. Yes. The other mechanism is Franco-valuta, which is also a unilateral Ethiopian initiative. Thirdly, and most importantly, we have cross-border cooperation that the Ethiopian government in which the Ethiopian government is working in collaboration with the government of Somaliland. And of course, when I say the Ethiopian government, I'm not specifically talking about the federal government in Addis. A key actor in these initiatives, in this cross-border cooperation between Ethiopia and Somaliland, has been and still is the Somali region in Ethiopia, which is basically quasi-sovereign when it comes to its relationship with Somaliland and other Somali inhabited areas in the Horn of Africa. So these are some of the institutional mechanisms. But a major opportunity in fostering a strong bilateral relationship occurs in the area of infrastructural development. That's why I want to focus on infrastructural development. The Ethiopian government's increasing interest in the development of infrastructures in the Somali region and the Berbera corridor in general is a huge opportunity for the development of trade and transit in the Berbera corridor. And you can see this growing interest from two sides, domestically and internationally. Domestically, the news is road construction. That's in the Ethiopian side of the Berbera corridor. Major developments in road infrastructure has been occurring over the past decade or so. So road coverage and accessibility have been massively increased, and this gave a huge boost to trade relations in the Berbera corridor. But that's not without its challenges. Development of road infrastructure in the Ethiopian side is not without its challenges. The massive road development and maintenance in the Ethiopian side of the Berbera corridor is marked by contests and conflicts over funding, spending, and other engineering issues. And of course, as most things in Ethiopia, inefficient management and administration. But the big news, other than this domestic development in road infrastructure, the big news remains Ethiopia's attempt in utilizing the port of Berbera in Somaliland and the regional and international dynamics that surround this quest. So it's this critical development that I'll focus on in the remaining part of my speech. So a little bit of context. Ali has already told you about the context, of course. The context of Ethiopia's growing interest in the port of Berbera is that its dependency on Djibouti. So by the end of the 20th century, as you are aware, various regional and international factors, colonialism, the Eritrean factor, and of course domestic policy choices by the Ethiopian government have made Djibouti, the Horn of Africa's smallest nation, Ethiopia's sole outlet to the sea. We are talking about these dynamics between the smallest and the largest states in the Horn of Africa. Now, as I have pointed out earlier, I will focus on the Ethiopian side of things and an academic side of things. Usually forgotten discussions about this is the Ethiopia's policy choices, the policy dynamics that surround Ethiopia's policy choices. So no doubt there is Ethiopia's dependence on Djibouti, and no doubt that it has created problems. Ethiopia's growing economy, poor logistics and poor management in Djibouti, and of course geopolitical competition. These all pose challenges. Now the question was, how was this dependency responded to by the Ethiopian government? The dynamics of choice in Ethiopia revolve around three proposals, and I'm tempted to call these three proposals minimalist, maximalist, and minimax strategies, somewhere in between these two. The first choice is the minimalist policy choices, which involve usually improving Djiboutian ports and developing dry ports. And this has been government policy for a long period. The second choice is maximalist proposals, maximalist policy choices, which basically revolve around reclaiming the port of Assab or reunification with Eritrea, or political integration with Djibouti. Now, somewhere in this, between this minimalist and maximalist policy choices is minimax policy choices, which basically revolve around diversification of port alternatives. And this has been practiced over the past decade. Basically, since 2010, this has been Ethiopian government's preferred policy alternative to address Ethiopia's dependency on Djibouti. That's where Somaliland comes into the picture. So changing political and economic dynamics have made the port of Berbera a viable alternative. Since Barakat has already spoken about it, I'm not going to speak in detail about it. But it's been on the air. The port of Berbera has been on the air since 2003 basically, but critical developments began to occur since 2010, especially the issuance of Ethiopia's growth and transformation plan in 2010. And it's through this process, gradual process, that the so-called Bishoftu Agreement, which is formally known as the bilateral agreement between the government of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia and the government of Somaliland for the utilization of the port of Berbera and services to cargoes in transit, was signed in Bishoftu, Ethiopia on March 31, 2016. So now the key question remains, what happens to the implementation of the Bishoftu Agreement and the development of the Berbera corridor? Now, changing geopolitical dynamics have already impacted the implementation of the port agreement, and particularly important is United Arab Emirates' growing interest in Somaliland, about which Barakat has already spoken about, so I will also leave this detail.
Mr. Tezera, you have 1 minute left.
All right, thanks. So the focus should be on the important geopolitical developments that pose challenges and opportunities to the implementation of the Berbera port agreement. So domestically, there are changes in Ethiopia's policy directions, and internal security situation. Ethiopia still lacks a grand strategy to deal with emerging geopolitical issues, unfortunately. But most importantly, since recently, there seems to be this changing focus from the minimax policy alternative, which I have spoken about earlier, to a maximalist strategy. So talk of reclaiming Assam in Eritrea was given air recently by an official and quasi-official means, and this would directly impact the implementation of the Berbera port agreement. And of course, there is deteriorating internal security situation, which has significant implications for the future of the Berbera corridor trade route. It has disrupted trade flow, increased risks for transportation, decreased investor confidence, and increased transportation costs. And gradually, if the situation continues like this, it might also lead to Ethiopia's regional isolation. Secondly, there are regional dynamics which involve the Horn of Africa and the Middle East. In the Horn of Africa, we have Djibouti and Somalia. Djibouti is still attempting to have sort of port hegemony.
May I ask you to slowly come to the end? Thank you.
Slowly, not slowly. You can wrap it up still, but.
All right, thanks. And of course, we have Somalia in the Horn of Africa, which is port utilization and all these regional geopolitical dynamics as a threat to its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Of course, Somalia has toned down its position following the political change in Ethiopia and the emergence of this trio of Abiy, Isaias, and Farmajo. But again, uncertainty again reigns following the fissures between Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki and coming to the presidency of Hassan Sheikh Mohamud in Somalia. And from the point of view of the Middle East, we have the Yemen crisis, the Iran factor, and the Qatar controversy, which have all made the region a site for intense geopolitical contest, and it has directly impacted the implementation of the port agreement. Finally, the third critical challenge surrounds superpower rivalry and this sort of surreal power transition that we have in the international order. Then you can talk about China's One Belt, One Road initiative. Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, Djibouti, South Sudan, and Sudan are all participants in this initiative. And China has already supported the development of Lapsed corridor connecting South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Kenya. And it has also supported maintenance of Doral Airport in Djibouti. But its presence in the development of the port of Berbera has been minimal. And just recently, past week of course, Ethiopia has become one of the 6 countries invited to join the BRICS along with United Arab Emirates. So the involvement of both Ethiopia and the UAE.
Mr. Tizera, I think we can maybe engage later on also with the questions, because we're trailing a little bit in time. Sorry for interrupting. First of all, thank you so much for your presentation. Please, an applause to him. And now, because I've been looking at the watch, nonetheless, I would like to use my privilege as moderator to ask the first questions. Please stay short and maybe in chronological order. Mr. Ali, one question I'm having, because you were mentioning already the example or the role model Djibouti could play in the development of cross-border trade. And working on the African Union in Addis Ababa, and also knowing a little bit the discussion outside of Ethiopia, on the continent, but also outside the continent, there are lots of hopes in the free trade arena, in the AFCFTA. And some voices say it has been rather a slow process, but I'm thinking that maybe such cross-border initiatives such as Djibouti and in Ethiopia, but also Somaliland in Ethiopia, could be something to be fostered and also to be sold to other countries, especially also in the western part of the African continent. So maybe you could elaborate in 1 minute what your stance towards this. Is there already an initiative to, let's say, sell the model of the cross-border trade in the region, on the Horn, or also around the continent? Thank you.
Just explain my Somali, because they have a lot of Somali. Suasha uu hadda ka dhawaajinayo waa khibradda matalika ee Djibouti isku dayayso in wixii la yidhaahdo dependence, in qayb keliya waddan keliya uunu noqon baahi keliya in laga jawaabo, laakiin laga fikiro in la gaadhsiiyo baayacadahan ilaa wadannada aan bada lahayn. Ethiopia ka ballaaran oo Kumeza ku jira 500 milyan oo customer ayaa ku dhex jira. Kolka hadafku inuu noqdo maaha in waddan keliya la tixgeliyo baahidiisa, waa in la isku dayo in waqti walba laga jawaabo baahiyaha kale. Iminka Djibouti khibradda fiber optiga waxay matalan ka xidhiidha leedahay ilaa Rwanda inay u gudbayso. Waxa kaloo ka mid ah in ay Djibouti isku dayayso ilaa Sudan inay ka keento petroleumkooga iyagoo Djibouti ka sii diraya. Kolka hadda aan la hadlayo wax la yidhaaho dee aan is odhan karno competition baa jiri kara, ma ooli karto meeshan. Waxa ooli karto keliya in aan service-kana laga rabo tayadiisa xoojino, dadka la dhiso, waayo khibraddii haddaanad u lahayn amba aqoontii aanad u lahayn inaad ka jawaabtid baahida any customer wax ku weydiisanaya, dee shaqaalahaagu dee haddayna ka jawaabi karayn lama jaan qaadi karaysid integration. 3, waxaa muhiima in ay la wada fahmo ka gobolkeena Eastern Africa, East Africa dhibta ugu weyn ee taala waa isfaham li'i weeyaan, dhalinaysa amniga inay halis geliso. Taayna waa in xoog looga shaqeeyo inay dadku isla fahmaan. Kolka la helo business tayo leh, in laga wada bixi karayo wixii dagaal keeni lahaa. Badida waxa dagaalada keena waa baahida keenta. Baahidana waxa duweyn karta baddaa weyn uu ilaahay dee naga dhaliyey in aan wada qaybtanno kolkaa hadaf ahaaneed maanta geeska fursad ba u tahay inaan ka wada faa'iidaysano maxaan ku dhaha baahida wadannada aanan haysan annagoo waqti walba tixgelinayna agreementnada iyo xeerarka internationalka ay jira haddii aad xeerarka tixgelin weydid nin dee waddadaada soo dooranaya amba soo imanaya oo odhanaya dee meeshaa baan ka iibsanaynaa way adkaanaysa sidaaban dee su'aasha kaga jawaabay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You will have to translate that to me later on, but second of all, Mr. Bashar, we've been hearing a lot about what Somaliland has been doing in strengthening the Berbera corridor and in really strengthening this trade. And we also know that there is an Ethiopian side in it. So if I'm informed correctly, the 19% shares of the port of Berbera have been not yet fulfilled by Ethiopia. So given obvious reasons of internal nature, but just in case, because the project in Berbera is of course a huge one, just in case Ethiopia would be not continue buying in, would kind of leaving this corridor apart, what would be the Somaliland strategy as being rather connected only with Djibouti, with federal states of Somalia, and then with Ethiopia? So what would be the strategy of Somaliland in that regard?
Thank you very much. aad baa mahadsan tahay. Wuxuuna weydiiyey laba su-aal oo muhiim ah. Su-aasha koowaad waxa weeyaan waxaynu ognahay Ethiopia iyo Somaliland waxa ay hore u galeen heshiis. Ethiopia iyo Somaliland kaliya ma ahana DP World way ku jirtay 19 berigii la sheegay ee Ethiopia lahayd halkee ayay martay. Soo kale wuxuuna weydiiyey corridor-kan aynu doonayno inaynu ka shaqaysiino haddiiba ay Ethiopia isticmaali weydo amba heshiiskaas uu hirgeli waayo maxaa qorshe uga yaala Somaliland in laga shaqaysiiyo infrastructure-kaas dhaqaalaha fara badan leh ay ku baxday ee aynu soo sheegnay. waana laba su-aalood oo muhiim ay la tahay. su-aasha koowaad boqolkiiba 19 horta waa arrin siyaasadeed. anigu shaqadaydu waa more technical waxyaabo farsamaan badanaa aan aada uga shaqeeyaa. marka arrintaasi waa arrin waxaan filayaa kolley ma doonayo in markaynu ka jawaabaynana uga jawaabno qaabka warbixinta suuqa taala, laakiin warbixinta aynu gudbinayno waa inay ku dhisan tahay aqoon iyo cilmi baadhis iyo daraasad waa inay ku dhisan tahay. waxaan ogahay saynu la socono sanadkan aynu ku jirno bishii lasoo dhaafay August waxaa yimiday Somaliland wasiirka gaadiidka oo hogaaminaya wafdi heer sare ah oo dowladda Ethiopia ka tirsan. waxay yidhaahdeen waxaan doonaynaa sheerkayagii iyo inay wada shaqayno. arrintaasi meel fiican baa laga dooday, waxbaa la isla meel dhigay, waxaana laga wada hadlay arrintaas in si dhow maadaama labada dowladood iyo laba dhinac ay isku baahan yihiin in la sameeyo guddiyo. laba guddi dhinaca Somaliland ujeedadeedu ma ahan in la abuuro sidaan hore usoo sheegay transit and transport corridor, laakiin waa in la abuuro economic corridor. marka si taa loo gaadho dhinaca Somaliland waxay rabtaa heshiis ganacsi trade caqabadaha uu saaxiibkay sheegay in lagu xalliyo. marka arrimahaas waxaa loo saaray guddi heer sare ah oo very high mataqaanaa profile ah. wasaaradihii la xidhiidhay ay qayb ka yihiin. waa very significant positive mataqaanaa signal sheegaya inay israbaan labada dhinac. arrintaana waxaa tusaale cad u ah in ay labada dhinac israbaan. Ethiopia dhaqaalaheedu wuu korayaa maanta 130 milyan oo qof oo meesha jooga kuma tiirsanaan karaan hal deked. waxay u baahan yihiin 13.5 milyan container TEU bay u baahan tahay. intaasoo dhan dekedaha jaarka inay isticmaashay u baahan. marka waa arrin qasbaysa. marka runtii waa arrimahaasaa jira. arrinta labaad corridorkan looma dhisin ujeedo la xidhiidha in transit iyo transport waxaa loo dhisay corridorkan inuu cid walba u faa'iideeyaa loo dhisay waa number 1 marka Somaliland maxaa istaraatiijiyad uga ah waxaan jecelahay inaan idinla wadaago waxaa jira Berbera Corridor Strategic Plan waxa weeyaan priority bay leedahay dhinaca Somaliland guddi habeen iyo maalin shirto arrimaha ka shaqeeya jira istaraatiijiyad number 1 waa maxay horta waxa weeyaan waa in ay Somaliland heshaan new trade partners sida uu saaxiibkay cali sheegtay waxa weeyaan saaxiibo cusub oo ganacsi ah oo aan ahayn Ethiopia kaliya laakiin wadamada jaarka ah Rwanda corridorkan waxa weeyaan waa corridor abuuraya integration wada shaqaysi iskaashi la xidhiidha beyond Ethiopia marka traders waa ganacsato caalami ah waa investors corridorkan waa infrastructure Somaliland anfacaya marka in heshiisyo caalami ah la abuuro diversification by the economic diversification dhaqaalaheena waxa la yiraahdaa waa single source waa mono economy waa dhaqaale xoolaha nool hadda eegto tabaca guud ee qaranka Somaliland amba GDP-ga dalka 75% waa xoolo nool malihin heshiis rasmi ah oo ay Somaliland kula jirto wadan kamid ah wadamada galbeedka la yiraahdo arrintaas waa very risky droughts baa dhaca natural disasters baa dhaca siyaasado kala dhaca wala joojiya dhaqaalihi marka waa khatar buu ku jira so I would like to briefly highlight what is the government's strategy little bit in English Somaliland needs
maybe you can do that to me later because we're running out of time last question to Mr. Tizera. When I had to cut you off, you were mentioning the entry of Ethiopia to the BRICS states, and as the same as we're here also talking about geostrategic decisions, also the United Arab Emirates, that are the main shareholder of, in terms of DP World, of the Berbera port, have been entered. So, do you think that this new dynamic, the extension of both Ethiopia and the UAE to the BRICS state could maybe boost up the project that has been a little bit trailing in the past 2 years?
Yeah, thanks. And short answer, yes, it has a potential to give a boost to the Berbera corridor. The entry of Ethiopia and the UAE can lead to increasing support, stability, and most importantly, legitimacy to the Berbera Corridor initiative. Increase investment in financing, expertise in technology transfer, and enhancement of collaboration and cooperation. And finally, it can change the geopolitical calculations. That's how the entry of these 6 new countries, including Ethiopia and the United Arab Emirates, to the BRICS group can affect the Berbera corridor.
Thank you so much. Now one question to the organizers. How much longer are we allowed to do? 10 minutes more than the normal time, or how much? Maybe break?
وما صدقي النصرة وحين وديسي كهر أنت أنا سبدل إيمانين أنت نشيس لكلين أنت أنا أرمر لمسلمين كده سيدي أهيد إمك سيدي أهيد يانا كفايدة I would like to mention that I have briefly explained in my first speech and preliminary introduction that the capacity of the port was very small. It could only handle not more than 100,000 TEU. TEU means 20 equivalent feet container. The containers are 2 types, 40, and the other one is 20. So the capacity was only that. But at this stage, it can have the capacity up to 500,000 TEU. So that's huge development, which is very attractive for the Ethiopian side. Also, the types of cargoes that usually handled by the parties are including general cargoes. The capacity was 1 million, but now it's $2 million, 2 million metric ton, I mean. So it has doubled. So it used to be come to only 7 port maximum, but now 17 can come to the port, and it can serve for the largest ships So in fact, a lot of work has happened. Along with this, the DP World has invested in port facilities, and new cranes have been purchased, mobile hardware have been procured to facilitate the time and efficiency. And that was the biggest priority for when we are looking at port efficiency. We look at the time, we look at the cost, and the system is being used. So in fact, a lot of work has been done with regard to this. Who's going to make use of? I refer to Berbera Corner Diagnostic Study. That's very useful research. I call you to review that research. It has been done by Trademark Africa. That states that the corridor will provide employment opportunity for 63,000 jobs. For Somaliland side, Somaliland will get 63,000 jobs if it is effectively implemented. And for the Ethiopian side, 53,000 jobs will be created. So these jobs will be created from logistics sector, will be created from, it's coming from 4 waves. Wave number 1 is the constructions that are happening. Industrial parks have been recommended because we are not going to see that the corridor only serve for transit and transport. Industrial parks should have to be established. SMEs who are buying from these industries using the corridor will get employment. A lot of new economic opportunities are coming up. Tourism sector has been also recommended. So in fact, we have a lot of and a plenty opportunity. It is in summary a win-win situation for both countries. We are not, my colleague, I don't remember the name, Berbera Corner, what are you focusing on? Yes, I think I also explained this. We are not focusing on, let me say, Somaliland is not only focusing only to have the transit and transport corridor. With regard to the work happening, I think you are thinking like how Ministry of Trade is thinking. Back in 2020, we have done an assessment in Togwachale, knowing exactly what's happening in Togwachale, because Togwachale is like a port, it's a dry port. It's the second most important place after Berbera. So we have done an assessment. We thought about we cannot wait this small town to stay and not be part of this corridor development. Let us prepare for it. We have recommended for the government of Somaliland that we need to initiate a small-scale cross-border trade agreement. That's called STR, Simplified Trade Regime. Such agreement usually support this for small-scale cross-border traders, always to be provide opportunity to cross-border trade. Minimum less than 2,000 value goods are allowed to move from each other. The problem happening in the cross-border will cease and will stop. So that assessment was done with the support of Trademark. Recently, early this year, we have done another assessment about infrastructural assessment in Togwachale, how far it is ready to have such an agreement. And in fact, we have done an MOU about this. And it's going to be part of this project. So we're not thinking in that way of only making the corridor more related to transit and transport, but also making sure that everyone is inclusive. We do not need to leave anyone behind. So I think it is a win-win situation.
Maybe just one last point, because the last question also was regarding everyone. So the question about common initiatives to make the region safer. Just 2 words maybe from your side if you have.
Hello. Su'aasha dambeeya waxa weeyaan cooperation ma ka dhaxeeyaan wadanadan si loo xoojiyo xagga security-ga. Horta waa inaad u aragtiin horta security inuu laf dhabarka dhaqaalahan dhan aan ka hadlaynay inuu yahay. Kolka wadanadan ilaahay badda geerkiga wada dhigay oo wadana horta isla shaqeeyaan marka hore. Waayo burcadbadeedu waxay tustay adduunka horta limitkii xeerka internationalka la yidhaahdo oo kayska Soomaaliya for example waniga nii macneeyey adduunka kama dhicin wadan kolka la daba socdo ninkii burcadbadeedku national madaragtay sovereignty-ga uu soo galo laga soo dhex qabsanayo oo lagu xukumayo adduunka. Kayska Soomaaliya markay ku bilaabantay caynka resolution-nadii la keenay waxaa ka mid ahayd in wadanada jaarku cooperation ay yeeshaan. Kolka waxaa ka mid ah waxa la yidhaaho Code of Conduct of Djibouti. Code-kaasi waa soft power soft power-ka wuxuu faa'iido taray amba mudho uu maanta sameeyey diiwaanigan arkayadee in laysku haysto baddan oo la leeyahay war adduunkii oo dhan baa doonaya inay soo degaan gaarka East Africa, Djibouti, Soomaaliya iyo Ethiopia si ay dee waqti walba ugu dhowaadaan dantooda gaarka ay u ilaalsan karaan. waayo waa inaad 80% oo adduunku cuntadooda wuxuu maraa waa dekedana horumaraysa. kolka ninka dee markabkiisa Shiinaha ka soo dirtay amba Mareykanka ka soo dirtay amba ka soo dirtay Japan wuxuu ku qasabsan yahay inuu ogaado regionkan inuu security iyo cooperation u fiican yahay. haddii uu fiicnay dee markabkiisa wuxuu odhanayaa anaa ilaalsanayo ninkii u dhowaadana rasaas baa madaxa ka saari oo xeerka adduunka waan ka dhacbixi. waxaa la sameeyey soft power-kaasi inay wadannadu ku heshiiyaan ay yidhaahaan war wax la dili karaya amba la dhaawici karaya amba intaa lagu qaadanaya ma jiri doonto. waxaa jiraya cooperation wadannadana in qofkii qaladka sameeyey wadannada lagu xakumo laguna xiri karo kadibna la tuso internationalkii in aan u diyaarnahay inaan la shaqayn karno oo dantoodii gaarkii ay ka feeriyaan danta guud ee annagana nagaga jirta. waayo haddii safetygeena aan annagu adkaysano waxaa dhacaysa inuu isaguna baahi noo yeeshu yidhaaho war training baan siinayaa waxaabaad u baahantihiin. dan haddii laga hadlayo bad waa inay securitygeenu iyo cooperationkeenu waqti walba fiicnaadaa. agreement badanna waa la sameeyey. code of conductga ka mida, protocol of Mombasa ka mida, Jeddah ka mida oo Jeddah extension weeyaan 2070 waxay u aragtay piracy oo keliya inaynan dhibtu ahayn laakiin la ballaarin karo ilaa case environmentka laga dhigi karo wax muhiima. then Jeddah 2017 waxay fudaydisay in qaanuunka la soo dhexgeliyo wadanadan badda ku naban oo dhan inay saxeexaan agreement ah in bircadbadeedu laga hadla terrorismka, laga hadlo maxaan ku dhahaa change climatekan hadduu dhib keeno sidii loogu hortegi lahaa. waad ogtiin Yamantan agteena markab weyn oo shidaal badan sidaa jiray. Djibouti lafdhabar bay u noqotay in dee shidaalkaay uu dhib loo keenin. haddii dee shidaalkaay ku soo daata baddi dee maxaan faa'iidaba ka helaynaa maxaan ku dhahaa waddan baahi gaara leh. faa'iidadeen waxay ku jirtaa inaan cooperationkeena mar walba xoojino aan una eegano danteena guud waxaa naga soo galaya danta gaarka dadka kale ay leeyihiin. sidaa baan anugu dee ku yara macnayn.
Right. I'll reflect on a couple of questions. One of the questions I was asked was the scope of the Berbera corridor, and this has been for quite some time now. It's been a legitimate criticism of the Berbera corridor, that its scope is very limited to the port of Berbera itself, and it's the route that connects Berbera to Addis Ababa. And the focus on the cross-border cooperation has been a minimal one. It's not that cross-border cooperation has not been given attention, but I completely agree with you that it hasn't been given, it hasn't been seen with the seriousness that it deserves. Cross-border cooperation should have been a focus of the cooperation between Somaliland and Ethiopian governments at the central government level. It's not that cooperation, cross-border cooperation, is completely forgotten. It's there, as I've already mentioned. There are various institutional mechanisms to regulate and govern cross-border cooperation. But if you look at these regulations, usually they are either unilateral, that the Ethiopian government has issued, or whatever regulations are issued, they are not issued at the Addis Ababa government level, the central government level. It's these government agencies like the former Ethiopian Revenues and Customs Authority or the Ministry of Trade that issued these regulations. So this shows the lack of serious attention that the Ethiopian government needs to pay. But other than that, it's true that there are some initiatives. Even mutual agreements were signed by the Ethiopian Revenues and Customs Authority and the Somaliland Customs Authority, regulating this small-scale border trade in the border town of Wajir. And that's also another legitimate criticism, that the whole focus, Barakat was mentioning that for all intents and purposes, Wucheli can be seen as a dry port. But that's not the only border town. That hasn't been the only border town. It's a historical accident that made Wucheli an important trading town, and that also leaves a significant border population out of this emerging trade corporation. That would have been beneficial for people residing on both sides of the border. The second question I would reflect on is security cooperation between the three countries, Ethiopia, Somaliland, and Djibouti. It's true that the Horn of Africa still remains a volatile region, but there are again various initiatives and efforts to ensure the security of the trading corridors in the region. And usually these initiatives are either conducted bilaterally or under the umbrella of IGAD. Ethiopia and Djibouti still remain on friendly terms, more or less, and there have several mechanisms of institutional cooperation, security cooperation between these two countries, including military cooperation, intelligence cooperation, and of course ministerial discussions at the ministerial level held regularly over a couple of years now. So there is this bilateral discussion, and there is, of course, as I've mentioned, the institution of IGAD, which is based at Djibouti itself. So this gives huge boost to ensuring mutual cooperation on security matters. But when it comes to Somaliland, unfortunately, it's not part of the IGAD community. But again, there are bilateral initiatives between Ethiopia and Somaliland, much like the security cooperation between Ethiopia and Djibouti. You have ministerial level discussions, security cooperation, military cooperation, and between Ethiopia and Somaliland offshore, so on a regular basis. So at least there still remains a willingness, at least, between these three countries, Ethiopia, Somaliland, and Djibouti, to ensure mutual cooperation on matters of security affecting the region as a whole.
I would like to answer a question raised, competition. Just one question raised by my colleague at the back. That's about, is there any relationship between the port of Berbera and other ports and other investment related to the road? In fact, the port of Berbera now is in the stage of development. The first phase of development has been completed, as I mentioned earlier. But during the development stage, Somaliland has a committee called Berbera Coordination Corridor Committee. This committee comprises of two parts. One is a ministerial level, which provides the policy level and guidance, and the other one is a technical team. So these committees visited northern corridors, including Mombasa, to learn lessons on how they are working. So that's like a lessons being learned for what's happening in nearby ports, to provide some insights and information. So I think it has been also said that Berbera is one of the best ports for the Ethiopian side because of the distance, because of the now efforts happening with regard to the infrastructure development and the commitments happening both sides, because it's all about commitment. If both sides have the desire and willingness to have an agreement and implement this, I think that will be successful. And it is what the African free trade area that its base is now is very low, can draw some lessons from. Because if it's implemented, that means both parts are interested in to create trade and investment, and that will create more jobs and more new economic opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So we have one last round. Please be very, very short. So, whoa. Okay, so let's go. The Mr. in the second row, he was the first one. Then the lady just in front of him. Then you three colleagues, and there is. Okay, three. The one here, and then the two there in the back. Please, very, very short. One sentence question, and then we move on.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Mahmoud from Harhab. Question for Farhad. We know that Somaliland President has publicly announced that new Berbera port, new airport will change from military base to a cargo base. We know that there is around 16 countries in Africa which is landlocked. So can we make another opportunity which is parallel to the Berbera corridor to make the new Berbera airport as a new opportunity for that 16 landlocked countries in Africa? Thank you.
السلام عليكم. سؤال فرخة يعلم وش يسمى لك من ديبو بالشركة العالمية عالم كور مالا بلن بيكش قيسا ديبو وش يسمى لك بشا سوماليا إثيوبيا بكسوة بشا سفر كسوة بشا إثيوبيا وش يسمى لك لأن أنا كنت سيسا إثيوبيا بكسوة أنا الوطن بستي هذا إثيوبيا بميسوق وش يسمى marka hadafkeenu waa maxay hadaf waxa weeyaan hadaf dhaqaale mise waxa weeyaan mid siyaasadeed su'aasha kale ee ku socota cali waxa weeyaan cali Djibouti matalaya Djibouti la shaqeysay DB1 faa'iidooyinka aad ka hesheen maxay tahay sababta aad u erideen haddana DB1 maxay tahay?
Okay, so we have the three colleagues over here on this side, and please, this one exactly. Please stay very short. Thank you.
My question is about the current status in terms of figures. The existing demands in Ethiopia, both imports and exports, in terms of maybe the number of containers. And Mr. Bakar has already mentioned that the capacity of the boats. How much of that capacity is currently being utilized by Ethiopia and Ethiopian traders, so that we can have sort of holistic understanding?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. You are the section, Mr. Barkhad. I need one question. What are the both between economic sector, infrastructural sector, according of Berbera Corridor? In Somalia and Ethiopia, especially of the movement of the economy. That's one question. Question two, Mr. Ali. And what's the role on Horn Africa, especially Djibouti, in the free zones and security maritime? يعني واحد يقول لك شيء محل دور كل ده جيش أفريقيا ودكتور جيش أفريقيا وحاول نسل حكى الدجاج وجبوتي marka iyad dugudor baad ku leedahay geeska Afrika ahaan idinka material hay'adaha iyad oo inta badan ka shaqeysa arrimaha kaabayaasha dhaqaalaha waxaan doonay inaad dadka inaad u yeeshay oo diyaarfaysid.
Thank you.
My name is Ali Mohamed Hussein. I'm one of the students of the Civil Service Institute, and my question is related to the tension is going on the regions. Can we say the tension is going on the region will affect the trade on the region?
And then there has been one Mr. First of all, the Mr. in the gray suit here. This one, yours before. Excuse me. First, the Mr. here in the gray suit, and then after that, the colleague in the back. Thank you.
geeska Afrika waxa jira tikado baahidooda dhameystira oo si Djibouti ay ka tahay berber ay ka mid tahay berberol aad tikadi loo weeyay waxa jira inay sameyso Ethiopia ay xiriir kala ay la sameyso wadamo kale geeska Afrika sida Kenya ila Soomaaliya oo 2017 APD حمد كراسة صحيحة تقدر marka Ethiopia ma waxay rabtaa iyadoo in geeska Afrika oo dhan tigideeda ay ka shaqeysto mise tigid baahideeda u dhamaystirto ay rabtaa
Hello, my name is Mohammed Ali. Thank you for the valuable lessons and valuable contributions. My question goes to our Ethiopian speaker. You've mentioned before that one of the key challenges is informal trade between Somaliland and Ethiopia. So, is there any efforts or maybe intentions made by your government and Somaliland to formalize the informal trade between the two governments? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'll be closing the question round now. And please, to the panelists, one very concise, quick answer, and I'll start again from my direct right.
I will start your question what I know. Su'aashan weydiisay walaashay waxa weeyaan waxaanu maqalnay Ethiopia oo qayb ka ah heshiiskaas laakiin DP World iyo Somaliland waxay u geli waayeen. Number 2 waxaynu ognahay haddaad dib u eegto qaalaha Ethiopia waxa uu ku tiirsanaa in badan Djibouti uu ku tiirsanaa Djibouti wax kala soo degaysay marka hab fikirka Ethiopia waxa la oran karaa in ay ka fikiraysay bal nidaam ka duwan nidaamkii hore waxa laga yaabaa in caqabado haysta xagga mataqaanaa badeecadaheeda iyo arrimahaas in ay istiraahdo haddii aad stake iyo interest aad ku hesho deked waxa laga yaabaa in ay wax ka duwanaadaan marka ujeedada guud waxa weeyaan waxay la tahay waa soo jiidasho oo in Ethiopia ay isku aragto in ay qayb ka tahay heshiiskaas saddexda geesoodka ah dhinaca kale marka la eegana waa dhiirigelin oo waxa la dhiirigelinayaa in dekedii Somaliland ee barbarasoo kale la isticmaalo marka runtii intaa wax ka dhaafsiisan oo aynu hayno maadaama interest baa ka dhexeeya saddexda dhinac interest waxa weeyaan DP World waxa weeyaan waa company faa'iido doon ah Ethiopia laftirkeedu haddaad eegto nidaamkeeda badeecadaha waxay leedahay shirkad weyn oo xagga ganacsiga ka shaqeysa oo la yiraahdo Ethiopian Shipping Line oo shaqadeedu ay tahay in ay sideena ma ahan oo badeecadaha u imanaya Ethiopia ma ahan xor nidaam waxay isticmaashaa la yiraahdo xagga mataqaanaa transportka in halkaa shirkad ay iyadu ka mas-uul tahay waxyaabahaas oo dhan ganacsi kastana uu nidaamkaas uu maro marka overall I can say it is an objective of making sure that Ethiopia sees itself to be part of the project and get interest and motivated for the use. Haddaad eegto qorshaha qaranka Ethiopia growth and transformational plan waxaa ku qoran 30% inay isticmaali doonto dhinaca berbera marka waa baahi keentay walaalkii cabsalaan isagana oo waxaan filayaa in la xiriirna wuxuu weydiiyey maxaa iminka la isticmaalaa iminka waxaa kasoo dega berbera oo keliya 2 nooc oo badeecada ayuubaa kasoo dega waxa weeyaan waa badeecada humanitarianka ah WFP da badeecadeeda iyo waxyaabaha la xiriira mucaawanooyinka iyo gaadiidka u socda dowladda Ethiopia ayaa kasoo dega kama badna haddii aad eegto in terms of TEU amba container terminal haddii lagu cabiro 2,000 oo container waxaan ka badnay baa sanadkii kasoo dega waxa weeyaan it's very very small waxaa la doonayaa potentialka capacity dekadu ay tahay waa 500 oo kun oo TEU iminkana waxay isticmaashaa 2,000 oo TEU you can see how the difference is I think these are more relevant to me. I will leave other questions for my colleagues.
waxaan ku horeysiinayay su-aasha aad bay u muhiim tahay Djibouti iyo DP World maxay Djibouti faa'iido ka heshay horta waa in la fahmo Djibouti marka horeba asaaskeedu ama dhaqaalihii wuxuu ku dhisnaa dekedan dad khibrad leh ayaa marka horeba ka shaqeynayo dowladda gacanta ku haysatay private sector-ku marka uu loo yimid muxuu faa'iido samayn karaya dee suuqii ay DP World lahayd unbaa soo mariyay Djibouti dee shaqadii naga dhexaysay ayna jirin laakiin faa'iidadu mudhaheegu xaguu yaallaa waxa u yaallaa maanta kolka laga hadlayo operator wax dhisa waxna isticmaala DP World iyo kaliya ma jirto many operator kala jira waxay mar walba ku xidhan tahay sida uu sheegay nin walba faa'iidada uu ka helayo ayuu horumar xagga hore soo marsanaya kolka Djibouti waxay qaraar qaadatay in ay operatorada kale adduunka ay la jaan qaado maadaama ay khibradii maanta leedahay waayo khibraddu waxa weeyaan mar dadkaaga haddii ay shaqadii xoojinayaan security badda ilaa dhulka isku xidhnaa ay safety tahay haddii toole waxa keliya meesha yaalla waa deymamanka la soo qaato sidii loo celin lahaa ee mashruucyadan waddanka beritoole u hanan lahaayeen generation and generation hadafyada inaan la iloobin ay tahay waa taa weeye waayo wax la dhiso maanta haddii deyn la celinayo berri kuwa dambe ayaa faa'iidadooda amba mudhahooga heli doona waxaan nii muujinayaa de boorkii hore Djibouti intaa oo sano ayuu soo shaqeeyey wixii deyn lagu lahaa wuu bixiyey waa very autonomous weli buu sii shaqaynayaa kuwo kale ayuu dhisay boorka DCT kolka la qaato wixii lala galay deyna waa la wada bixiyey imika mudhihii faa'iidadii ayaa socda in diversification aan samayno ooba ka fikirno in 500 malyan oo aan meel ay u maraan badeecad ay jirin inaan ka jawaabi karno baahidoodii annagoo respect garaynayna change climate waayo dikadan kaamiyadu marayaan ee corridor-ka leeyahay haddii 2,000 oo gaari ay maraan dee pollution-kii wuu iska jiraa moogta then annagu ilka Djibouti waxaan isku daynaa in aad loo isticmaalo green port ee dekadaha treenka inuu kooraan madaragta ku shaqeeyo oo loo yareyn karo madaragtay badeecadihii keeni karay accidentyo badan oo dad badan ay ku dhiman karayaan dariiqa ay marayaan waayo deegaanka ay marayaan dad baa maraya ari baa maraya maxaan ku dhahaa dad baa ka ganacsanaya dariiqa laftigeega waxa oo dhan waa in haddana annagoo eegayna in dadku ay ka wada noolaan karaan kooridoorka la ilaalin karaa haddana cimiladan isbedelaysa oo wax aad noo saameynaya imikadana dee aad noo saameeyay Djibouti waxaan ku soo noqonay igad maanta madaxweynaha Djibouti baa ka madax igad shaqo yar ma qabin shaqadeedu aad buu ballaarantay extremism and violence ee terrorism-ka ka qayb gashay migration in dad badan baa badii ku dhimanaya waa in cooperation ay yeeshaan wadannada isku dhow si dadka loo tacaalo loo gaaro integration waayo integrationku waa modelada wadannada adduunka maanta Djibouti iyo Ethiopia haddii la eego waa wax xiriiriye soo jireena waa fudaydin badan baa jirta xagga hadday noqoto customka hadday noqoto facility-ga human being dadka bini'aadanka isweydaaranaya anytime iska soo galaan anytime bay baxi karaan in facility-yada ay waxay keentay in igaadkan laftigeegu ay mechanism ciyaarto ay kaga hortagto wax walboo dhib keeni karaa geeskan Afrika kolka waxaan u malaynayaa maanta in aan isla fahmno waxa ugu muhiimsan aan hadalka soo gudwaanidii nin walba meeshuu ilaahay dhigo horta waa inuu security-giisa ka adkaadaa waa inuu danta guud ee dadkiisa iyo dalka ka fikiro waa in agreemanada lala galayo dowladaha dowlad keliya ayna jirin ay dowlad walba danteeda gaarka ay soo horeysiinsanayso ay dowladuhu ka fiirsadaan si dhismayaasha dambena taabooyinka dambena generation and generation faa'iido ugu yeesha intaa baan hadalka ugu soo gudnaanaya aad baad mahadsantihiin.
All right. 3 questions. The first one, the efforts made by the Ethiopian and Somaliland governments to address informal trade. I should first say that the distinction between formal and informal in the context of Ethio-Somaliland trade relations is a bit tricky. If anything, what we have between these two countries is the formalization of the informal and the informalization of formal trading operations. But be that as it may, there have been various efforts by these governments to promote formal trade relations, and I have already mentioned some of them actually. Some of the institutional mechanisms I have already discussed, such as small-scale border trade regulations that the Ethiopian government has put in place, the Franco-Valuta regulations, and of course promoting cross-border and technical cooperation between these two countries. These are some of the efforts that Somaliland and Ethiopian governments have been using. But it's not always these carrots that the governments have been using, at least from the point of view of the Ethiopian government, has also been using sticks. Sheer violence has been used to crush this prevailing informal trade relation between Ethiopia and Somaliland. That's where the anti-contraband command post and the use of the Somali special forces and of course the local militia comes to the picture. So a combination of what may be said carrots and sticks have been used at least by the Ethiopian government to promote formal trade and to regulate the informal trade that exists between Ethiopia and Somaliland. In terms of the size of Ethiopia's foreign trade that uses support of Berbera as its main outlet, I'm afraid I don't have its exact number. Around the mid-2010s, it's been suggested that Ethiopia would aim to make its foreign trade, 30% of its foreign trade pass through the port of Berbera. But that was more ambition than a reality, and until this day, less than 10% of Ethiopia's foreign trade makes use of the Somaliland, the port of Berbera. And there are obviously various reasons, but I'm not going to discuss that because we have already mentioned those. Finally, there is this question from the back that the security, if the tensions that exist in the region will affect the trade in the region, the short answer is yes. The tensions in the region will affect the region in general and trade in particular, because there is always this two-way relation between trade and peace. Trade always promotes peace. Okay, not always, I should have qualified. Trade usually promotes peace, and peace is always positive for trading relations. And any internal security threat will be detrimental to trade relations. That's, I have mentioned in my presentation earlier that the internal security situation has already, in Ethiopia at least, has already begun to impact its trade operations, right? Let's be fair and let me just say that's not something unique to Ethiopia. So the internal security situation will always affect trade operations. That's when you have the disruption of trade routes. Like for instance, road closures in Ethiopia, that's detrimental to trade relations, or increasing the number of checkpoints, including border checkpoints, or increased risks for transportation. Again, you can take for instance kidnapping of truck drivers in Ethiopia, in several regions of Ethiopia. And all these affect trade relations. They also decrease, as I've said, investor confidence. They increase transportation costs, and they might lead to regional isolation of the countries that have been affected by this. So the solution, the way out, should be addressing these internal vulnerabilities that the countries in the region have, and of course promoting bilateral and regional cooperation to address these security issues. That would be helpful for promoting trade relations, and by extension, that would be helpful for having sustainable peace in the region as a whole.
Thank you so much. So we've almost come to an end. Now I will just walk around the three panelists and